It is a real pleasure to be with you, my brother Richard Schaefer, historian of Loma Linda University Health.
Correct.
We are with our students who are all around the world, and we want to share who the person is that has devoted so much energy, life, and love to what you do. Usually you go by Dick.
Yes.
Are you comfortable with that?
Sure.
Well, I am plain Johnny.
Okay.
Dick, what can you tell us about who you are as a person?
Well, I was just thinking, I'm going to tell you some things that I have very seldom told people. When I was about 10 years of age, I was riding my bicycle up Mountain View from Victoria Street. I was riding south, and I dismounted my bicycle to cross Highway 99, which is now Redlands Boulevard. This predates Interstate 10. And as I dismounted my bicycle, I had a very unusual experience. I didn't hear any trumpets, I didn't see any lightning, I didn't even hear any words, but I got an impression. And if I were to put it in words, it would be, you will someday make a major contribution to my cause in Loma Linda. And I remember saying to myself, God just talked to me. And I had a nice warm feeling inside. And then I lost it for 40 years. I didn't tell my twin brother about it. I didn't tell my parents about it. I didn't tell my family. But it came back to me about 40 years later as it had just happened the day before. And I remember thinking God had just talked to me. Well, something else happened. I have been giving this talk around the United States, actually around the world. I've been as far as Singapore telling this story.
When you say this talk, you refer to the PowerPoint slide presentation that we recorded.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
The providential beginnings of Loma Linda. It has evolved. I've been employed here since July of 1966, so I have lived a lot of Loma Linda's history.
And you have a beautiful pin. I don't want to distract you from the story you were going to, but you have a beautiful pin there with the year 45. And what does that mean?
That means that I got my 45-year pin a couple of years ago. I'm actually in my 48th year right now.
Of service to Loma Linda
Yes,
University. Continuous, uninterrupted service
correct.
to this institution.
Yes.
You were talking about Chicago.
Okay. I have given this talk all over the United States now to 28 camp meetings, and I've spoken at medical, dental, ministerial retreats, and so forth. The Southern Union has a big event every 2 years in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Somebody recorded that and gave it to me. For some reason, I gave a copy of that to Dr. and Mrs. Lester Lonergan, and they listened to it. And one day Mrs. Lonergan came into my office in the medical center, and she said, Ellen White told John Burden that the story of Loma Linda needs to be told until the end of time. John Burden told the story. And then he told that to Lester Lonergan, her husband. Dr. Lonergan told that story for years. Then he retired, and they listened to this tape. She came into my office one day and gave me this background, and she said, we hereby pass the cloak of responsibility on to you.
How did that feel?
It felt like I had gotten it indirectly from Ellen White. Excuse me. And then something else happened. I had a very traumatic personal experience in my life. And it broke my heart. And I actually suffered major depression from it. It lasted 3.5 years. One Sabbath, I went camping out in the desert. And I woke up in a very unusual way. Usually when I wake up, I'll look at the clock and maybe doze off again. Maybe I'll look and see how much light is coming in the window and eventually wake up. This day was completely different than any other day in my whole life.
This experience in the desert, waking up, happened within the 3.5 years.
At the end of it,
Okay.
I went from totally sound asleep
Mm.
to totally wide awake in a nanosecond
Mm.
with real words going through my brain.
Mm.
And those words were, God will take care of you. It was so compelling. I started singing that song we used to sing years ago, God will take care of you, with all the words and everything. And within weeks, after 3.5 years, my problem was solved.
Mm.
And I felt that it was a revelation, that it was a prophecy maybe. But those are some very personal things that I don't tell a lot of people.
Now, these two stories have a lot of meaning because they come at unexpected times.
Yes.
And they show the character of a God who is looking over us.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the feeling that God was near you and somebody close by, like a body? Or was it the feeling God was an overpowerful king looking over his kingdom and you are part of his...
I felt both.
both at the
Yeah.
same time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
It's when I think about God, I talk to him probably more than most people you know.
Mm.
But at the same time, I realize he's the creator of the universe, and that is just totally awesome.
Mhm.
And I, it's kind of difficult to put the two together. How could he care for me so much and allow me to talk to him as a friend when he is so awesome? You know?
Perhaps he is so awesome because he cares for you.
Yes.
One explains the other.
Right.
Now, these two personal moments when God touched you in a particular way, obviously are not the only times when you have been in communion with God.
Mm-hmm.
When you work for 45 years at this institution,
Mm-hmm.
you have seen the hand of God in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Would you care to tell us a bit more about family, if you're comfortable sharing, before we go into the institutional part?
There is something else I would like to tell you that
Please.
happened before I started working here. They were answers to prayer.
Yes.
I went to Central America, southern Mexico and Central America, and I recorded Indian languages for a company in Malibu, California. It was called International Educational Recordings. And we recorded the...
This was a commercial enterprise of yours.
I was working for this International Educational Recordings.
You were an employee.
Yes, I was an employee. They were located in Malibu, California. And the last president of that organization was Bob Edwards. He was one of the King's Heralds Quartet. Okay. Anyway, we had 14 lessons in basic Christianity, 1 lesson in health and hygiene, and 1 lesson in temperance. And we had a Spanish manuscript. So we had to find Indians who had learned Spanish, who could speak the Indian dialect without a foreign accent. They translated, we recorded, we made 7-inch red vinyl discs, sent them back with little gramophones so that they could play their records without electricity.
We are in real time.
Yeah.
The phone is ringing. We will have a short break and we will continue.